Shalom from Jerusalem. This is Israel at War, an update on TV7 News Israel on the 566th day of Israel's longest war, which started on October the 7th, 2023, with the horrific massacre by Hamas and then expanded to other fronts: Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iran itself, the West Bank, and even other more remote areas, Iraqi militias and the like. And this is also Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, and we will touch upon the echoes of that terrible experience with our three distinguished guests. Our regular viewers are familiar with all three of you. Brigadier General in the Reserves, Relik Shafir from the Israeli Air Force. Welcome.
Hello.
And also Colonels Dr. Anan Wehabi and Reuven Ben Shalom, all of you experts on Middle Eastern, regional, and global affairs. And let me start with you, General Shafir, because of your participation in the Osirak raid in June of 1981, when you and seven of your buddies, your brothers in arms, destroyed the Iraqi nuclear reactor. Prime Minister Begin at the time mentioned the Holocaust and the Israeli vow never again as the principal reason Israel undertook that extreme step. He said he didn't want to see those horrible sights of Jewish boys and girls, elderly people, and the rest once again in peril. Was that also one of the dimensions or values that you yourself and the other fighter pilots thought about, briefed about?
We weren't briefed about, but the thought was behind this. I'm named after my grandfather, who died in the Holocaust in 1943 out of the city of Vilnius in Lithuania. My father was lucky enough to make Aliyah a few years earlier without the family. And so I think we all had that thought in mind. And these thoughts brought with them determination. And in those years, we were second or third generation removed from the Holocaust. It was very present, a lot more than today within the Israeli society. And others, for instance, my wingman, who was Ilan Ramon, his family also came out of the Holocaust. So we had a common denominator on the one hand and a common will on the other hand that went along with us during the training and the operation itself.
Colonel Webby, the Israeli Defense Forces, as well as other organizations in the Israeli intelligence and larger defense community, have many non-Jews, Druze, Circassian, some Arabs. Do they also partake of this Holocaust remembrance? Is that memory instilled in the non-Jewish components of the Israeli defense establishment?
Yes, we go to the history, and in particular the connection between the Druze community here in the Holy Land and the Jewish community before the establishment of the State of Israel. There was already a connection and a real, a very deep friendship in order to be part of the establishment of the State of Israel. The Zionist movement has started already long before the Holocaust. But we could see together this collective trauma of the Jewish people, and to what extent it shaped actually the Israeli national identity, as well as the security doctrine, if you want, and the attitude towards threats. And we've been part of that, part of the IDF services and security services. And we could see that when the Jewish people chose not to play the role of victimism, victimhood, but playing a powerful state, it was really very impressive from the perspective of the minorities in the Middle East, that the Jewish people decided not to forget what had happened there and the genocide and the threat might be happening again, but chose to be a powerful and to nation building instead of just telling the story of the past.
Colonel Ben Shalom, a distinguished late Air Force ace and Major General Giora Rom, who was, among other duties, the defense attaché in Washington, told several times about his experience when he was invited to the Pentagon when in the 1990s they started a Holocaust Remembrance Day, and he recounted there, he was invited by the top leadership of the Department of Defense. He recounted his experience as a high school student during the Eichmann trial in 1961, and next to him sat his classmate and then his Air Force buddy, Dan Engel, and tears flowed down from his eyes at the testimony of the victims who came up to testify against the Nazi criminal. And unfortunately, Lieutenant Engel was killed in the Six-Day War as he was taking part in one of the heroic operations of the Air Force. Now, this was 30 years ago. You have a lot of experience in contacts with the American military and other militaries. Does it still resonate? Now we are 80 years after the end of World War II. There are less and less remaining survivors. And of course, it's only second-hand accounts which are heard. From what you see and hear among your colleagues who wear the uniforms of other militaries, do they still understand the enormity and the significance of the Holocaust in the Jewish and Israeli experience?
Well, Dr. Wahabi was my commander and mentor in the military, actually, my last commander when he was chief instructor of the National Defense College. So he must remember that one of the first things I did when briefing our colleagues from overseas was I put a famous picture of the Jewish child raising his hands on the Holocaust, of course, with a German student present and discussing this, because this is the essence. This is our DNA in a way, or it's embedded in our DNA. And every professional around the world that wants to know us and wants to work with us, one of the first things is to understand where we come from and understand this powerful narrative. Now, for our viewers, I'll say that this is an important discussion, not because it's emotional for us or important for us, because this is the way you understand us. This is the way you understand Israel's psyche. You understand our national goals, our national strategy, even these days as we speak, after October 7th. This is key to understand what we're doing now and probably what we're going to do in the future. I believe that sometimes it may hold us back in a way, because when you're so grounded to this powerful issue of the tragedy of the Holocaust, and you say never again, then in a way you have to do everything you can in order to prevent that, including taking risks or sometimes not taking risks because you can't chance going back to what happened in the Holocaust. So this is an extremely relevant issue. This is not just a Remembrance Day of something historic. This is something that is relevant to today, to the way we think, to the way we act, to the way we operate. And directly to your question, yes, I think our colleagues understand this, appreciate this, learn this. And yes, when they're good friends, they're also extremely sensitive to how important it is to us.
So Relik Shafir, Reuven Ben Shalom led us down the intended path from the Holocaust to the October 7th Gaza war. And it is often said in Israel that this was the worst massacre of Jews ever since the Holocaust. Now, the Holocaust took part almost 6 years from 1939 in the fall to 1945 in the spring. In Europe, the Japanese, of course, had committed other crimes. So if you try to break it down, it's approximately, on the average, 3,000 victims a day during the years of the Holocaust, and 1,200 Israelis, Jews, mostly Israelis, perished on October the 7th. So are the two comparable, including what Reuven alluded to, what Israel should do and perhaps should have done to prevent such atrocities from ever taking place again?
I don't think these are comparable. I wouldn't compare a precisely planned and executed plan by the Nazis along those years of killing as many Jews as they could with this particular event that obviously was tragic for Israel, and as you described it, it's the worst happening that we had since the Second World War. But Israel is a strong nation, and through some failures of the IDF and our Secret Service, which were supposed to know beforehand that something like this was planned, and also through the fact that the attacker always has the advantage. The massacre took place, and about 1,200, including soldiers and civilians, were killed and abducted, some of the civilians from their bedside. I would go back to 1956. There was a certain person named Roy Rothberg who was murdered by Fedaim, they were called at the time, while plowing the fields. And in the funeral, General Dayan, who was chief of staff at the time, lamented and spoke about the fact that here we are standing against the Palestinians on the other side, and continued to talk about the conflict between us and them, and we should always stand on guard in that area. On that day, we did not stand on guard well enough, and therefore the blame is on us rather than looking for anything else. That was not the case during the Holocaust. The blame was not in the Jewish community in Europe. And this is a big difference. And this is why we're able to continue the war against the Hamas and Hezbollah up to date. I'd also like to correct, this is not the longest war that we had. The longest one we had was the war of attrition between 1967 and 1970 on the Suez Canal front. And the tenacity of the war in this year and a half has varied greatly, and was a lot of the time was static. So I wouldn't really want to compare not in time-wise and not in the strength-wise. We did not fight armies. We fought terror groups here, Hezbollah mainly, and Hamas. And we were very careful not to create collateral damage. Certainly in Gaza, this is why the war took so long. And this is part of our heritage and culture, to try and refrain from killing uninvolved people. This is part of who we are, and that is why the war is taking so long.
And the person you mentioned, Roy Rothberg, was the head of the kibbutz, Nahal Oz, which was attacked once again on October the 7th.
Let me add just one more thing, if I may. I took part in a group of pilots who renovated Nahal Oz kindergarten. We did that over a few weeks, and we will continue to do so in other places in that area.
Which once again shows the power of Israeli civic society and volunteer groups which step in when the government comes short and is otherwise occupied. Now, Reuven, the Israeli Air Force over the last couple of decades has come into the habit of conducting flyovers over former concentration camps in Poland, mostly. Why? What does it symbolize?
Well, first, this of course connects in various levels. The Israeli Air Force is, of course, perceived as a very important strategic arm of Israel, and perhaps that symbolizes more than anything when people stand on the ground in Auschwitz, and I was there on the ground, and looking up and seeing fighter jets in a way echoes this crazy thought of back then who we were, the victims with no army, no one to defend us, and here we are, the mighty Israel now. And it's sort of a demonstration of power. And also, look, we're human beings, we're emotional, looking up and seeing a flyover in any circumstance. If it's a memorial or it's in this stance, it's a very symbolic and emotional thing. Specifically, the air power aspect of this also has to do with the question that will probably never be answered, the question of why weren't the camps bombed. And I'm not in any way now, giving my bottom line here. And I think there's some of them are good answers. But even here, this aspect of the air power overhead over Auschwitz and what this air power back then could or could not have done, that's very significant. And if you go back and you watch the videos, you see how emotional this was for people on the ground, certainly for the pilots in the air. Once in a while, I go back and I watch the video and I listen to Amir Eshel as he reads over the radio these powerful images. So I think your question is on point here.
General Eshel is a former Air Force chief in Israel, of course. Now, Anan, how do Israel's enemies, concentrating right now on Hamas and Hezbollah, not on Arab governments and militaries, but how do these enemies perceive the Holocaust and its impact on the Israeli psyche when they plan their operations? Do they intend to bring about the very debate in Israeli society which we touched on right now in our conversation?
Yeah, if you refer to what the Prime Minister of Israel said this today, he compared between the state of mind of the Nazis and of the Hamas, that they both want to genocide the state of Israel, to eliminate Israel. And if you remember the propaganda of the Nazis, they first started with dehumanizing the Jewish people in order to justify the genocide action. So here again, a lot are trying to connect the Holocaust and this Memorial Day with the current situation in Gaza, the sovereign state of Israel to defend itself, but on the other hand, to what extent it might be using power. Of course, the Israeli ethos and the discussion and discourse rejects any kind of comparison between the two cases, but it's done from the other side and raising difficult ethical questions about the historical victimhood and to what extent Israel can conduct such an action. We should remember that Israel takes into account a lot, and of course everybody that is coming from the IDF knows that the civil suffering and the humanitarian needs of the society. It was also a very deep discussion in the Israeli society, and everybody knows that. So dehumanizing the state of Israel today in the current crisis, it's only a propaganda done by part of the terrorist organizations. But unfortunately, there is a deep silence in the world regarding that, as if the world tends once again to see only the society in Gaza and not understanding the needs of the state of Israel in this conflict. So the civilians remain a very central issue in this conflict from the point of view of the Israeli IDF actions and designers. And this, once again, is part of the Palestinian discussion trying to dehumanize the Israeli side unsuccessfully.
General Shafir, we started this conversation in Iraq. Let's circle back to Iran. And obviously the Israeli defense or security doctrine has both a deterrence and an action leg, defense and offense. And we can, of course, divide it into two parts. What Israel is keeping as its doomsday weapon, whatever that is, if it is in existence or only a mirage or a phantom, to name two of the fighter planes in the former Israeli arsenal. And the other part, of course, is the Israeli determination to strike whatever emerging nuclear threat there exists in hostile countries. Obviously, there are several countries, the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, India, Pakistan, Israel does not consider them existential threats. But Iraq, Iran, we heard about the North Korean assistance to Syria, which caused in 2007 the Israeli decision to strike at the plant built by the North Koreans for the Syrians. So this is, again, a two-part question. First of all, does Israel has it decided that whatever happens, it will not let others strike Israel with impunity, and therefore must have such a deterrent that will convince them that there is no possibility of doing so? And if that is the reality, why do they keep building those weapons of mass destruction? Don't they understand that should they try to use them, they will be annihilated?
Well, obviously, you're referring to the mad, mutually assured destruction that was in place during 1950s and onward between the United States and the Soviet Union in the post-Second World War. And the Israeli story of these kind of weapons, I think, is well known. But I'd like to point to another issue. None of the countries involved had a mission, or at least a stated mission, to annihilate the other. The only case is with Iran, that had taken on itself a mission to destroy Israel, annihilate Israel. They said so publicly, and therefore they pose a real threat not just a hidden or below the table one. And that is why we feel that it is not just our right to do to make sure that they don't have that kind of a weapon, but it's a decision that is warranted by these wishes of Iran. Second part of the question relates to why are they building a bomb, or are trying to, at least. 1988, Khomeini, when he had admitted that they're losing the war with Iraq, they had over 1 million out of 30 million at the time casualties. They would send children to blow up landmines. And 1988, they were totally defeated. They had Scud missiles fired from Iraq to Tehran every week. And Khomeini wrote to his generals explaining why they're actually going for a ceasefire. And he wrote, "We must develop a weapon of leverage." These were the words that he used in translation to English. And having said so, I think they all understood what is required. And so the weapons were not directed towards Israel, but towards the world, or the Arab world for that matter, and their arch enemies, the Sunnis in Saudi Arabia and Egypt. So it was only of late that they directed their venom towards Israel for reasons that we won't go into at this time. But having done so, we are determined to make sure that they won't have the capability. And that is the backdrop and the framework of the Israeli strategy concerning Iran.
So if the three of you were now sitting in the Supreme Court, we would say that General Shafir wrote the opinion not only for the majority, but that you two agree with him. And even if you don't, we don't have time to go into your disagreements, which are non-existent. For the time being, thank you all. Anan Wahabi, Reuven Ben Shalom, Relik Shafir. This has been Israel's at War, an update concentrating today on the Jewish and Israeli Holocaust Remembrance Day, which coincides with the 566th day of the Gaza War. And we will be back. For the time being, this has been the Israel at War update from Israel News at TV7 in Jerusalem. Shalom from Jerusalem.